crazy. Let's go.
The app dropped him. There we go. Okay. So again, the way that this is going to work, we got two options. Option A is that you guys go with the regular format of the 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 15-minute open dialogue, and then the 2-minute closing. Or we can do a 2-minute opening, 20-minute open dialogue between the both of you, and a 2-minute closing. Which would y'all prefer?
He made the challenge. He could pick.
What did you say, Jesse?
Whatever the shortest is, this won't be long.
The shortest one would be the 3-minute critique and then the 15-minute open dialogue. So let's go with that one. Who wants to go first, or should I flip a coin?
Challenger goes first.
Okay, so Jesse's gonna go first.
I'm good with that.
Alrighty.
All right. So
So,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say how the time works, but if you want to do it.
Oh, no, you got it. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was gonna say once you start, Jesse, once you start talking, I will. Hold on. Once you start talking, Jesse, I'll start the timer, and like I said, I'll give a 30-second warning in the chat. All right, and I'm ready when you are.
Perfect. I think we should start with the very basic, very top argument. The argument presented to us in the first place was provided to us by an image. Let me get it on my screen here. The image that was provided to us was claimed to be Mesoamerican. It is absolutely not Mesoamerican. In fact, when I go over here and I put it into my search bar, what we have here is the climate of the Holocene. It's a very pressure conversation about climate change. The painting itself is not of Mesoamerican origin. It does depict people of different colors, but we can neither describe nor ascribe what exactly the artist is trying to target here. Even if the characters themselves are black, it doesn't necessarily mean that the people are black in the actual depiction. The other part that we have here is the ℶ heads. The ℶ heads, no matter what you want to say about their structure, unfortunately, wrong about ℶs. You'll notice the hair here and some of the phenotypic structures that you were describing earlier are still not correct. Okay, we do have indigenous people that do have those features that are not black. Okay, and then on top of that, besides that point regarding his architecture and the other point here, the actual painting and describing, especially when he scrolled through his phone, is not from the area that's being described. The one that we're depicting here is from Algeria. It's from several thousand years ago, so it's in the right time period, but all of the other art that you've shown are from different regions. When you scrolled on your phone and showed us, you showed us different places, for instance, French things. You showed us an example of other places. Am I saying those places are not accurate? No, but we have other cities where race is not the descriptor. It's actually role in society. So for instance, the people on the right aren't necessarily a different race. They have a different social strata. So Manny's premise is flawed, and all the information he's given so far has not been accurate. That's my opening statement.
Thank you so much. Right on time. Perfect 2 minutes. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Manny, the clock will start when you start talking.
My opening statement is this, and I'm glad that he mentioned the ℶs because the ℶs were absolutely black people. My opening statement is this: black people were the first people on this planet. They existed on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years before anybody else of any so-called racial class could have existed on this planet. And there's a reason that they depicted themselves as black, because they were. Modern science tries to make it deeper than what it is and saying they had a different social status. Well, if they had a different social status, then why would they depict themselves as black and not white? Because at that time, black was the highest social status because the indigenous people of the planet are black. And I will use multiple doctors to prove this premise. Thank you.
All right, that was just 30 seconds. You're finished with your opening statement?
Yep, simple.
I'm sorry, did you guys pick the 3-minute interrogation or the 20-minute open it?
The faster one. I think it's only, what is the interrogation now?
I thought it was the open dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
It was like 15 minutes. And so that means you get 7 and I get 7, correct? Because I found a video right about 7 minutes just to prove my point.
You want to play?
Okay,
Okay, that's fine. That's
They
fine.
said I could present
Guys. No. It was the 2 minutes, right? And then the 3-minute critique after for both of you.
Mhm.
And then there's a 15-minute open dialogue.
Okay, so he gets 7 and I get 7 of the dialogue.
Did we go through the critiques?
We've not
No,
got
we
to
haven't gone through the critiques yet. We're doing that now.
Okay. Yeah, Bex, do you want to just do it that way?
Yeah, let do with the critiques, right?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about with the open dialogue.
yeah,
Should we
say
just have it
do the
7 and
20
7?
minute- Do the 20-minute open dialogue and let them go back and forth, and then let them have their 2-minute closing statements.
Well, Jesse requested the shorter one. So that's what I'm saying. If we do a 15-minute open dialogue, then you would just moderate and understand, like, hey, Manny is running this for 7 minutes of open dialogue. He gets more of the leeway there to control conversations. And then Jesse would get the other 7 minutes to control the conversation. So
Right.
y'all are still getting 3-minute critiques.
So we're going to start the 15 minutes of open
No,
dialogue.
no, no. Did they already do 3-minute critiques
No.
after the opening statement? Okay, so we are at the opening. We did the opening statements.
We're
Now
doing
we
the
are at the
dialogue.
3-minute critique. So each of
Okay,
you get a
perfect.
3-minute critique.
That's what I thought. Okay, so I'm sorry about the confusion, guys. So Jessie, the clock will start. You get 3 minutes to ask questions and build your argument. The clock will start when you start speaking, and I'll give you 30-second warning in the chat.
That's awesome. I'm really confused as to how black, especially for the Olmecs, could be considered the top social status when post-Columbian exchange, we end up with a social strata that puts them at the very bottom because they would have been considered, I can't say the word, but it's a slur now, because they would have been mixed of indigenous and enslaved or imported Africans. That simply can't be true, that the Olmecs were the number one and then the Spanish showed up and then they're just the bottom. Okay, that doesn't make sense. Now, to prove that point, we could go to something as simple as blackpast.org. They often fact check conspiracy theories like these, like what's being explained, including some of the features, including the noses, the ears. I've had to deal with this Olmec conversation before. One of the other issues you have, or one of the other questions, I guess, that remains unanswered is how the paintings are justified as the Wall of the Warriors when they are in fact not from the Wall of the Warriors. And then on top of that, I think what we really have to interrogate here is which serves white supremacy more. The idea that someone painted multiple colors and we can't ascribe their positions, or the idea that we should erase indigeneity as a class to say that pretty much everyone's black, so you really shouldn't use race. While meanwhile, the white people are using racism to destroy Latin America at the same time period that you're claiming that black people are superior. It's just, and all of those things are really important. I don't, if you can't answer those and you can't prove to us any of that information or even provide a primary source where De Las Casas, for instance, or Columbus explains that the Olmecs are number one, then I don't think you have a leg to stand up. But that's up to you.
Is it my turn?
You can respond in this time, and then you control it for the next 3 minutes.
Okay, see, this is the thing that I think you're miscategorizing my initial argument. My initial argument is not that the Olmecs were number one when Columbus arrived. First off, you have to realize that the Olmec civilization existed way before Columbus was even a thing. Before there was even in Italy, there was the Olmec civilization. So what are we talking about? Then we got the Aztecs and the Mayas, like time progresses. Okay. But during this time of migration, it wasn't that just that the Olmecs were black. It's that people from Siberia, like we were talking about earlier with the Inuit and the Bering Strait, were migrating to the Americas. People who had already went through what would they call them? Algonquoids. People who had already went through mixing with other, what we would call races today. We wouldn't have called them races then, but people who had already gone through mixing with other races of what we call today are not the same people that I'm talking about when I'm talking about the Olmecs. I'm talking about Olmecs are people who derived directly from Africa, migrants who came across the ocean on the Canary Current, so the Canary Current and other currents that lead you directly to South America and Central America. So that whole idea of race that you're trying to bring into it wasn't even a thing at the time that we're talking about. The reason why the Olmecs were considered, okay.
So I guess Manny can keep going because it's now his time to control the conversation, and then Jessie can respond.
The reason why we even talk about race today is because you're trying to look at it from the lens of today. Back in ancient times, there was no such thing as race. Everybody looked pretty much the same. I mean, people looked a little different based on, like I said earlier, the mixing with other so-called races or different people groups that were coming into existence at the time. But at the time of the Olmecs, there wasn't even a thing or a classification. So yeah, and when we get to the 15 minutes, I'll present a whole lecture to let you know exactly what I'm talking about. Race is a social construct invented by white people in Europe. It did not exist at that time because Europe didn't exist at that time.
I can respond to what you're saying?
Yeah, you can
Absolutely.
respond.
Hey, where does the Canary Current go?
It flows from Western Africa to Central America. Literally right where South America and Central America come together.
Do you mean like this, where it doesn't flow all the way there? The Canary Current that starts up here and rounds itself here, but doesn't go all the way over here? Do you see the mileage here? We're talking leagues of mileage. You're talking about a current that starts here and loops right in here that does not lead to all the way in here, which would have been where Columbus landed. Your original claim was about Taínos. I'm going to leave you alone on Taínos because I'm not Puerto Rican and you're lucky. But when we look at it with the Olmecs, who, by the way, would have settled in here, your claim doesn't make sense. Your timeline is messed up. That's number one. But the Canary Current, yeah, the Canary Current that you're showing is sure, but I have the Canary Current being here. Yours is circular, right? But if it's a circular current, for instance, right here, from Britannica, right? If it's a circular current,
that is
in here, then the path that's being described in climate science that we have now that's updated, which is the one that I just showed you here, this is updated per climate, then you're suggesting that the currents have either drastically changed which would mean that there's actual travel or artifacts that we can find that connect this part of Africa to in here. Do you have those artifacts available to show that right here, this part of Africa has pottery, maybe jewelry, any of that stuff that connects directly to here? So besides your current, do you have physical artifacts that is moved from here to here, yes or no?
I do. Yes.
Phenomenal. Can we get that now? Because it's your claim.
Okay. Before we go there, as you can see, he only showed one side of the canary current. Where's my finger? He only showed one side of the canary current, and that would be this side right here. He didn't show how you can catch another current that takes you directly to South America or Central America once you pull into the Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf of America, as they like to call it today. You can literally see how it goes from Eastern Africa right here, straight.
Time. You can finish. Go ahead, Manny.
You can literally see. I'll make it short. You can no, that's the canary current. You can see it right there. It says it on right there, canary current. You can literally see how it goes from Eastern Africa. You hit this other current right here, the North Equatorial. I can't really see it, current, and then you end up where? In Central America. Here. Where's my finger? Okay, canary current leaving from Eastern Africa. You hit this North Equatorial current, and as you can see, it ends up directly in Central America. So that's how you would come from Eastern Africa to Central America. You also have another circular current right here at the bottom, the ℹ𝕆𝕆𝕄, or whatever you call it, that leads from South Africa, ends up in South America. Right there. There it is. You can see it. So that would be Brazil. But the canary current would take you to Central America, or what we call Mexico today.
All right, we're going to start the open dialogue part of this now. You guys have 15 minutes. It's going to start with Jessie since Manny just finished. I will put a 5-minute warning and a 2-minute warning in the chat. And the time will start when Jessie starts talking.
Fantastic. So here's the issue with the current theory. The current willing to give, I would be willing to concede to, for one reason and one reason only, the connecting currents, assuming that you do A, timing, you'd have to catch it by season. B, you'd have to have sails to get that far. Remember, the scale at which we're talking about in this map, I got to open this link again. God bless Encyclopedia Britannica. Oh, wait, that's weird, guys. When I open that source, it shows the canary current isolated because that's what was cited. You're telling me that a canary current that you can catch, though, in multiple ways. You also have another map right here if you'd like. Oh, good. The Wi-Fi. Oh, come on. Anyway, you could also catch the current right here. Sure. But the issue that you would have to prove is that West Africa, right here, has artifacts that aren't transported later on. They would have to predate the Columbian Exchange. They'd actually have to predate Aztecs, Incas, Mayas. I don't think we have that. All the way in here. Sorry about my zooming. Unless you can provide evidence that we have artifacts from here that landed here, where there cannot be a concession. The other issue that you have is the race dialogue that we had about Taínos, for instance, doesn't follow. The logic doesn't follow. On top of that, the Olmecs logic doesn't follow because indigenous people also have some of those traits. So, I mean, do you have any of the artifact evidence that we would need to prove that has like direct link? Do we even have like a genetic, like we have to have pre-enslavement, pre-Columbian exchange genetics for that?
I don't want to cut you off. Can I answer that question?
Yeah, like now's the time. Like you have to prove all of these things. There's
Are
like
we in
8
the 15? Are we in the 15 minutes now? Or
yes.
How does it work?
Now's the time. Yes.
Okay, so I can present my 7 minutes at this point. Okay.
Yes, you can. Go ahead, Manny.
Okay. This is the thing. They tried to say earlier that Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote extensive books on this same subject, was invalid. So can I present another doctor? His name is Dr. Runoko Rashidi. He's an expert on this subject, also a tenured professor. You can look him up yourself if you like. I just like to play the lecture. I kept it at 7 minutes just for this conversation. Here we go.
All right. That's a foundational question, we might say. That's the question. One thing is that there are many African presences in ancient America. I think that there's a tendency to act as though the Black presence in these various parts of the world is monolithic, but you have a series of migrations or movements, some voluntary, some involuntary. You have African people as the first people to settle on the shores of the Western Hemisphere, tens of thousands of years ago. You have, for example, in Brazil, the remains of an ancient African woman called Lucia, after Lucy or Dinknesh in Ethiopia. These are the skeletal remains of an African woman who lived in Brazil at least 11,000 years ago and probably more. So you have, as we indicated at the beginning, African people as the first people in the Americas. One of the things Ivan Van Sertima used to say, Runoko, it's one thing to say that you were first, but it's quite a different thing to say what you did. And so the next phase we can look at is the role of African people in classical Mesoamerican civilization, especially among the Olmec, the parent civilization, and then the Maya, the Aztec, the Inca, essentially all of them. And then you have Africans who are captured and taken to the Americas against their will. I want to go back to that slide in a moment. Against their will. And even now, the movement continues. You know, you have Africans from the continent who are students, who are businessmen, who are in the Americas because Africa has been so raped and robbed and pillaged that many people leave Africa in search of a better life. And so what we are talking about now is the second phase, the classical period of American civilization, sometimes called Mesoamerica. Now, this head right here that you see in front of you is the head that was on Ivan Van Sertima's book that came before Columbus. And this is what we call, one of what we call the La Venta heads. Now, there are 20 of these heads, and no two of them look exactly the same. I'm the only person that I know who has seen and examined all 20 of these heads. Even when Ivan wrote the book that came before Columbus, which was published in 1977, only 14 of those heads have been identified. So they're still finding them. So go back to that picture and let's talk about it for a moment. Let's use that as an illustration. Can we see that head again? It looks a little bit like you, my brother. This is another one.
Can I get the big box?
But it's fine. We can use this as an example. The one I was using was the one that was on the cover of the Van Sertima book that came before Columbus. But this is located in the same area. There are 20 of these heads, and they are divided into 4 areas. The first 10 are from an area called San Lorenzo. San Lorenzo is important because it's the first settlement that we know of in the Americas. And so you have 10 of the heads from there. Of that site, only 1 is still there. 7 are in Jalapa, Mexico. 2 are in Mexico City. And then you have the La Venta heads, of which there are 7. La Venta is the second major Olmec site. 4 of the heads from La Venta, the best ones, have been moved to the neighboring state of Tabasco. La Venta's in Veracruz. In the 1950s, a Mexican oil company, I believe called Pemex, found oil here and decided to move the 4 best heads to Villahermosa, Mexico, and Tabasco. That's where this one is. And then you have 3 badly damaged heads that are still in La Venta. And then you have 2 heads from a place called Jessie. Jessie is the 3rd big Olmec site. And then you have 1 more from a place called Cobata. The Olmec are important to us because they are the parent civilization of the Americas. All the other civilizations come after the Olmec. The Aztec, the Inca, the Maya, the Toltec, the Teotihuacan people all come after the Olmec. And the Olmec, according to Ivan Van Sertima, and I'm a disciple of that, had an African element inside it. Dr. Van Sertima didn't say, and here he disagrees with some other scholars, that the Olmec were African. He said that at a certain time in history, a small group of Africans, a fleet of ships from the Nile Valley, sailed across the Atlantic and entered the Olmec world and turned it out. They showed how to move large objects in stone. They introduced calendars. They introduced major forms of advancements in agricultural science. And as a result of that, those Africans who came from the Nile Valley were given an exalted like status. And this is the controversy because many people would have us believe that our history only began with slavery. And I ain't having that. And Ivan didn't have that. This one right here is the one with the braids in the back. And this is one of the Jessie heads. And it's very, very powerful. As I say, no 2 of the heads look alike. They're scattered in Mexico City, in the state of Veracruz, and in the state of Tabasco, all 20 of them. Yeah, those are the braids. And this is the only one with braids. Now, we don't know who these Olmec heads represent. Leo Winger, who I talked about at the beginning, who mentioned that he's the first scholar of any ethnic group that I'm aware of, to really deal comprehensively with the African presence in ancient America. He believed, and this is astonishing, but we're talking 1920, 100 years ago, he believed that those heads represented slaves. One of those heads weighs 100,000 pounds. Even common sense would tell you that who would build a massive head, 100,000 pounds, for a slave, and the master is not represented. This is the first head that was identified. And this one was identified in the 1860s by a Mexican scholar named Jose Melgar, who said it looked Ethiopian. Now, this is in the 1860s. This is the first head that was identified, and this is one of the Jessie heads. The one with the braids is the companion head of this. Now, you would think, at least I would think, that just looking at these heads, you would say, there's a brother, there's a black man. But we have been so ingrained with a sense of inferiority, or the inferiority, the view, the general view, that many people think that black people never did anything, that even when you're looking at it, you are not able to digest what you are saying. I think that's called cognitive dissonance.
Now I will use my last couple minutes to say,
He
I
presented
don't even know if you have more time.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
If that's all 7 minutes.
Go ahead. No, it wasn't 7 minutes, but go ahead. That's fine.
No, I just finished because I'll end it. It's okay.
That's not the only evidence to be presented that African people were, because Olmecs were the original civilization of ancient Mesoamerica. So to even try to sit here and act like the Olmecs were not black is completely disingenuous, especially when they literally made colossal skulls to themselves. I mean, colossal faces to themselves to show what they look like. That is an African war helmet that he has on his head. Multiple Olmec heads have African war helmets on top of them because at the time they were not smelting iron in what we would call Mesoamerica. That's because those people had been separated from Africa so long that they didn't have the technological advances that they had on the motherland. So yeah, I'll pretty much just land it there. If you need more sources, you got Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Renoko Rashidi, Dr. Kaba Kamene, Roseanne Dunbar Ortiz, who's not black. She's literally considered herself to be an Aztec person. Her name is Roseanne Dunbar Ortiz. I'm just came back to me in the moment. You can look her up also. And if we had more time, I would love to present her lectures on this exact same subject.
Yeah, Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz is not claiming that the original people are considered black by Americans.
She absolutely does, and I can show it to you on video.
I would after watching that, I think you should really let me speak now. There's two things that are the problem. The Africana studies, the entire body of evidence, the scholarly criticism that's provided to They Came Before Columbus is that most of it is based on pseudo-history. What we saw in that Zoom call actually explains the same. We can do that simply by, if you Google, I mean, my prompt was simple. I put They Came Before Columbus and I asked, for an imperative review. All of the imperative reviews call it pseudo-history. Okay? They are happy about, I mean, I agree. It's a landmark text that has a lot of pride. Its timing is perfect. It's in the 70s. It's important for Black history. It's important to remember that Black people have accomplished many things outside of this. But some of the issues with the Zoom call that you provided are that we're using facial recognition to suggest race. Hey, Manny, what race is this person? Manny, what race is this person?
Judging by the eyes, I would say they look Asian.
That's crazy. You know what kind of statue this is? It's an Olmec statue. They often depicted children, cherubs almost. Yeah. So one of the issues we have with using art as a judge is that artists are not perfect. Another example I have for you. This is former captain of Atlas FC, winners of the bike champions of the Liga MX. I don't know if anybody here is Mexican, but this is Aldo Rocha. Can you tell me if this head shape and that nose structure strikes you as similar to any of the statues you saw? It's 2025, sir. He won the title in 2021 and 2022. Look at his face structure.
What about it?
Also, the helmets that you're describing are also not uniquely African. They're head caps. You don't have any designs on them. The other issue that I have is bringing up with the Egyptian and Mayan calendar. This AI review, because I couldn't remember the difference between hieroglyphs, gives you a breakdown of the different types of cycles. If anyone wants to prompt them for themselves, the comparison between all of the calendars is that there's really not much. So if they brought over the calendar from Egypt, why isn't it the exact same calendar? The other thing we don't have is a connection to lore. Most of the pantheon of Mesoamerican gods and goddesses and other, by the way, they have a third gender, God forbid. We don't really have any of those connections to the Nile. So is there a reason they would come here and just not bring anything with them? I also don't see artifacts. I asked you specifically for artifacts that we could find. The person in the video says that there are artifacts. Do we have any? Can we show any? I mean, this is what I'm talking about. That's why it's pseudo-history. One of the things you would have to prove is that a West African plate, for instance, or a bowl or a shard of something would have had to come. Now, the one thing I save for the end is the Lucia woman, Lucia in Brazil. She's found as a Paleo-American skeleton. She's found in 1975. However, as a human fossil, there is no claim that she's Olmec. She would have been Brazilian. If you remember from our chart earlier, God bless, I'll pull it up for everyone because I'm feeling charitable today. If you take a look at our pre-Columbian exchange water currents, which by the way would have required no sails. Okay, this is by rowing only for the most part. Sails and mast work would not have been made. The whole of the ship that would be required is not iron-bound. It's also not made of certain types of wood. You're also talking about essentially 5 or 6 man crews. She's remarkable because she ends up down here. That is famously not where the Olmecs are. The Olmecs are all the way the fuck up here. So if they were the top class that they're being claimed to be, and we haven't found their temples yet, why haven't we found those sarcophagi? I rest my case. This is a silly argument.
Perfect timing. We are at the 15 minutes. Thank you so much. We are going to go to closing statements, although I think Jesse kind of did his. Manny, you're going to go first. You have 2 minutes. I'll give a 30-second warning in the chat, and time will start when you start speaking.
I would have liked to present the lecture from Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz herself, who is a historian on this subject. I've given you multiple other historians to look into. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it's like I said initially in this conversation, the idea of black people not transmigrating this planet and not being the first people to every landmass on this planet when they were literally on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years before anybody else is racist in its standing. I mean, in its base argument, simply because of the fact that white people don't want to acknowledge the ancestry of what black people did on this. I mean, the history of what black people did on this planet. So with that being said, I would like you to go look up Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz if you want the lecture where she was talking about black people being the first to Americas. Then I will give you the link. Another thing, it's crazy that you say I show no artifacts when the Olmec heads are literally artifacts, and you're the one who brought up the Olmecs in the first place. But then when I give you proof, proving that the Olmecs were black, all of a sudden now that's just pseudoscience. You know what pseudoscience is? Anytime that the scientific community don't want to admit that black people did some shit, it's pseudo. Anytime that the scientific community don't want to admit that aliens exist, it's pseudo. Anytime that the scientific community don't want to acknowledge that certain things happen to certain people on this planet that were diabolical by other people on this planet, then all of a sudden it's pseudoscience because it doesn't go along with the main narrative. But I've given you multiple doctors who prove my premise to be true. Thank you.
Awesome. Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz is one of my most read authors. I've read every single selection that she's given. So to sit here and suggest that my retort to you in that your sourcing is flawed, including an entire Zoom meeting that requires me to believe they came before Columbus, suggests to me that you haven't read her texts. You may have listened to her explanation. You did not read her texts. Saying that Lucia is the first person here is very different than what you're claiming about the Olmecs. And you have to remember my claim, which I think is completely proven here, is that Manny based all of his research on very scant artistic information. That's why I showed you that picture of that Asian baby that, by the way, was Olmec. Okay. The other thing to remind everyone here is that my claim has never been that black people haven't succeeded at all, or somehow black people haven't been successful. They've been remarkably successful, especially in Latin America. Latin America striations were built to destroy them even further than the United States' chattel slavery. I would even say in a more effective way, they're disgusting. It's one of the worst things that's ever happened in human history. So trying to paint me that way is really funny. But one of the interesting things that I still don't have proof of is a shard or a piece of evidence that went from West Africa all the way to the Taínos, or all the way to the Olmecs, or to Chichen Itza, where the Wall of the Warriors shows an Algerian painting, apparently. Okay? In closing, this was goofy. I don't want to have, I would rather unify with you and talk about white supremacy and how they're using the talking points that you're using to make sure that indigenous people are wiped out. They don't want to talk about Aztecs. You said that Dunbar Ortiz can't claim that she's indigenous. That means that her indigeneity is wiped out. That serves white supremacy more than anything else that's been said today. And it's absolutely abysmal. We should be uniting against this shit, Manny.
And time. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We want to thank you for participating in the Red Room, Blue Room 1v1 lightning debates. A judge has been listening and will score you very shortly, and we will have those scores out for you just as soon as possible. This was a 1v1 lightning debate between Jessie and Manny. We want to thank you so much for listening. You are more than welcome to request the box again. Yes, and come talk about what you just heard.